In this video, I'm going to be covering a number of things related to empaths, highly sensitive people, and people in their spiritual awakening process. So what I'm going to get into is a few different things. One, why is it that so often, especially sensitive, spiritual, psychic people, are afraid to feel their bodies, afraid to come into their nervous systems and really ground and be present in life? Where does this come from? How has religion and spirituality in many ways contributed to these belief systems and fears? How is this connected to empaths and really sensitive people feeling everybody else's energy so much? And finally, what are some of the things that we can do to shift this and really enjoy the human experience as we deserve to enjoy it? My name is Adam. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm a freedom and clarity coach. I help people get freedom from their past, from their trauma, and then clarity on their vision for their life and their purpose. Before I get started, I just want to let you know I'm doing free breakthrough calls. There is a link pinned in the comment section below. These are amazing calls where we go over your vision for your life, what's stopping you, and some steps you can take to finally create the life of your dreams. Now, one of the things that I have noticed consistently on my journey, both with myself and working with clients, especially really sensitive people, is this fear of embodiment. It's this fear of being here, because being here and being in your nervous system can be so overwhelming and so painful. And what it does is it causes so many people to stay in this sort of like fight, flight, like try to escape, try to stay away, try to avoid sort of pattern, which prevents them from healing and ultimately taking their power back. Now, where does this come from? It comes from childhood trauma, right? So whether we're sensitive or not, but especially if we're sensitive, right? When we're kids, if we go through something very difficult, very painful, very traumatic, it can become so overwhelming emotionally to the nervous system that one of our defense mechanisms is to dissociate. It's to check out. It's to disconnect from our body so we don't have to feel the overwhelming pain and trauma. And this makes perfect sense at the time. Another thing that happens is our soul will withdraw its essence from the body so that we don't have to feel so much. And it can leave, it can check out, it can fragment, it can splinter, it can end up all over the place, and it can become a total fucking mess. Now, all of this is healable, but it's important to understand that this is kind of what we do. And these trauma responses or defense mechanisms that we kind of employ as kids make sense then. But when we grow up, we can see how this can totally ruin your life, really, because we're still walking around in trauma, avoiding ourselves and our reality, and it's not serving us anymore. Not only that, it's preventing us from getting to the other side of that, which is the gift of love, joy, presence, relationships, creating the life you want, having strong boundaries, all of that. Now, what are some ways that religion and spirituality have contributed to this pattern? Well, before we really get into that, it's important to understand the distinction between the old timeline and the new timeline. So the old timeline, we'll say, was up to about December 21st, 2012. We've all kind of heard about that shift. Though I've heard from other people, the energetic shift didn't really occur till about 2015. But the point is, on the old timeline, everything was filtered through this very dense lens of consciousness. Okay, so everything to some extent was a bit tainted. It was kind of based in separation, right, wrong, good, evil. Like there was only a certain level of intelligence that anyone could get to because that was the level of the consciousness on the planet. So anything that came into being, no matter what it was, had some level of it being tainted. Though certainly there were some religions and philosophies that were more pure and based in unity than others. Like, for example, Zen Buddhism and Taoism were a lot better than like Old Testament Christianity. But they all still had some of this filtered in. And now that we're on the new timeline, it's kind of important to check back and see what old habits or belief systems you've kind of carried over that are holding you back, because we're in a whole new level of consciousness that no longer serve us, so we can let them go and fully ground and create a whole new life and reality. So what are a couple examples? Well, one is, first off, I want to say, I'm a big fan. I'm a huge fan of Yogananda. I'm a huge fan of the Self-Realization Fellowship. I think there are a lot of fake gurus out there. I believe that lineage was the absolute real deal. I love the autobiography of a yogi. They've helped me immensely, and I couldn't say enough good things about them. All in all, it was brilliant. But they did, and I'm just pointing this out, they did a little bit carry the belief system that matter is a prison. And they would talk about that. I've read that multiple times. And I just want you to check in and see like what that does in your nervous system, or how that could contribute it to like dissociation in your life if you're walking around all the time with the belief that matter is a prison. Or imagine you had 15 lives as a monk and you kept repeating, matter is a prison, matter is in prison, matter is a prison. What that's going to do is it's going to create an escape route, an escape mechanism, so that you're constantly trying to get out of the body and get away. And that was a lot of like the kind of the Hinduism philosophy was really like all third eye based, which is great to be in the third eye, but it disconnected everybody from the lower chakras because the whole goal was get the fuck out of this prison. Right? Another example where this sort of, needing to get out of the body or wanting to escape from life is very prevalent is Buddhism. And I want to clarify for a second, because a lot of Buddhism was amazing, but again, some of it was a little bit tainted with certain perceptions. So let's just take, for example, the first noble truth, right? Which was something to the extent of the truth of suffering. Now, what the Buddha exactly meant by this, I don't know, but it's important to look at how this gets filtered through collective human perception over time. Because one of the ways that this is repeated constantly in like the collective vernacular, however you want to describe it, is life is suffering. Okay, life is basically inherently suffering, right? And then the Buddha goes on to say, but there's a way out of the suffering through detachment, etc. And so much of that is correct. But look at what that does now that we know, like, how much our belief systems inform our reality. How much we now know that we are the co-creators of our reality and the creators of our own life. When you front load your whole belief structure with life is suffering. And this is also what happens when things get passed down from person to person to person. Everything gets diluted. But what that does is it leaves us with the only real reality and possibility is like to get out of life. I mean, that's what that's the impulse that can ingrain in so many people, whether they're aware of it or not. And the other part of Buddhism that was very tainted by the old timeline was that the idea that the way out of life and rebirth was to attain enlightenment. And that was like the way to stop having to come back over and over and over again. And the reason for this was because on the old timeline, some would say, and I would totally agree with this, the reincarnation grid was basically set up so that we couldn't leave. It was like we were stuck here and you had to come back, which is something that completely takes away your free will. But then what that does through the lens of that level of consciousness is it sees life, any kind of a life, as sort of a punishment and therefore suffering. So the goal is to attain enlightenment so you never have to come back and basically be alive again. And what does that do? How does that fuck up our concept of life? And I would also like to quickly suggest an alternative perspective on enlightenment. I'm going to do a separate video on this at some point. We have this belief almost that enlightenment means you're done. It's like you did it, it's over. You attained enlightenment, you graduated, you never have to come back, you never have to be human, you never have to experience anything again because now you're a perfect being. Fucking bullshit. What if enlightenment is an experience? What if we're all enlightened as souls and we incarnate as humans to experience the human experience? And maybe you've attained enlightenment in other lifetimes, and then you come back because you're going to have a different experience this time. Because the thing that does too is it creates this like unattainable ideal of enlightenment, and then it creates this sort of goal to compare yourself to then feel like shit, and like to realize like how unevolved and like how poor your spiritual progress has been like up against all the time. And it's not even true at all, because you already are enlightened as a human, whether you're perfect or not. Life is an opportunity to have all these different experiences merged with the divine without having to just hurry up and attain absolute enlightenment or we're all fucked. It's very important to point that out. It's not a prison. And it's important not to judge this because at the time, it basically was a prison. The old timeline essentially was a prison. So they were working with what they had then. So it's not so much about, oh, fuck that. It's about like, well, we've evolved forward since then. So that served us then, but it doesn't anymore. And now it's holding us back. And then, of course, on the far end of the obvious old timeline spectrum, we have, Old Testament Christianity. And I don't really think anybody needs me to get too much into that. But like, you worthless piece of shit human, the fact that you were born, like, fuck you, like, obviously that's going to be kind of traumatic. And if you don't do it absolutely right the first time without even knowing what right is, you're going to burn in hell for eternity. Like, clearly that is going to be something to escape as fast and as much as you can. Okay. And what we're doing now on the planet is we're merging spirituality and matter at the same time. We now live in a new energy where we are free to come and go as we please when we're done with this life. And life is a blessing. So how can we shift these perceptions now? The next question is, how do these perspectives contribute to an empath's and a highly sensitive person's constant feeling of everyone else's energy and stuff? Well, in a couple ways. One, any trauma, whether it's from these belief systems that life or the body is a prison or not, or trauma from childhood when we were really sensitive and the emotions were too much, and so to compensate for that, we created these defense mechanisms of dissociating and checking out. What that does is so there two energies cannot occupy the same space at the same time. So if we're not in our body because we're fragmented, dissociated, traumatized, etc., okay, other energy is going to get in there. So we're going to just be like this open, blank vessel that just allows everything around us to come in and out. So we're going to feel everyone else's crap. The other thing is, from the childhood trauma, empaths become very hypervigilant because we're kind of monitoring our environment all the time to see when the other shoe is going to drop. So we become kind of programmed to be sensitive and pick up on everything around us. And also, if life is a prison or the body is a prison, then we don't want to come back into our body, which is how we actually heal the trauma from childhood, is going through our emotions, transmuting them, transforming them into the gift, into the other side of the sensitivity, which is love, joy, peace, presence, where we become these energy generating machines that can transmute things without having to feel them, because we are here and present and fully embodied. So the solution to all this is to make peace with our vessel and to understand that the body is the point in space-time that represents the present moment. The only way to heal is in the present moment. So the only way to heal as a human is in the body. And also shifting the perspectives to see to see it as a gift, to see it as a blessing, to understand we live in a new world now, in a new reality where we are meant to both be enlightened and be human. And we can have experiences, and we can eat, and we can have sex, and we can do all these things that feel good and not be so attached to them that they become a prison, but not detached from them so much that we're constantly seeing any joyful experience as a test to for our spiritual nature, and the goal is to get the fuck out. It's a new world. It's a new directive. It's not tainted anymore. And that's our job. We now have the gift of shifting everything around. So I would check in just to see where do you have some of these old belief systems? Because they may be in your subconscious. Yeah, maybe you're into Buddhism. It's not that Buddhism is bad. It's not that these things are wrong. It's just kind of reframing the filter that we're looking at them through and understanding that some of it was tainted and we want to remove that. Where are you afraid to come into your body? Either from childhood trauma, or where is your soul maybe a little bit programmed from past lives, seeing that matter as a prison and all that. And as those begin to dissolve, we form a whole new relationship with being human. So let me know how that goes for you. Please let me know if you have any comments, any questions. any issues, any breakthroughs, any revelations. I'd really like to hear from you. I have a free energy clearing if you want some help getting through some of these old patterns. It's in the description below. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to next time. Peace.